Namaste. Welcome to the third edition of the Global Festival of Oneness, organized by the Advaita Academy, celebrating the life and works of Adi Shankara. We will start with a prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru-Paramparam. We're very pleased to have with us Deepa Bhaskaran, Salem, who is going to talk to us about the topic Teaching Vedanta for Children. Before we start today's session, I'd like to introduce the speaker. Deepa Bhaskaran, Salem, is an Advaita Vedanta student and sadhaka. She speaks and writes on Hindu Dharma and parenting and conducts Hindu workshops for parents and youth. Professionally, she's a technology marketing executive. She has learned about teaching Dharma and Vedanta to children by experimenting on her 3 children and on many youth whom she mentors as a life coach. Her workshop information can be found on lifethehinduway.wordpress.com. Welcome, Deepa ji, to the session.
Thank you. Namaste. Let me share my screen. Start with a prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru-Paramparam. Thank you to Advaita Academy for an opportunity to reflect and speak on a topic that I've been talking and writing about for a while now. And also, like Anuradha ji said, experimenting on my own children, as well as many children that attend my workshop. As you are all aware, the role of the mother has been glorified, or the role of the parent has been glorified for starting off the child's journey. And the ideal mother from our Puranas, as you know, is Madalasa. And her story in the Markandeya Purana is very inspiring. Her lullaby starts, it's an Upanishad in itself. And she teaches her first 3 children the essence of Vedanta, after which they attain Viveka and they actually renounce. And for the last child, she actually teaches, Raja Dharma and how to live with the life of a Karma Yoga and Upasana. It's a very, very inspiring portion of our Puranas. And that's where I felt compelled to also do my part. And no Madalasa, needless to say, but before we, it's also a great opportunity as we embark on our Vedanta journey to actually share it with the family, because it's an easy opportunity to have those discussions at home. In a way, I feel it is my Nididhyasanam when I actually share it with my children. And all Acharyas also talk about this, how much ever you talk about the Upanishads or Vedanta, it actually benefits us more than it benefits the children. So I enjoy this opportunity and I've learned a lot by doing so. Again, for this session, I'm speaking from a parent standpoint, but the same applies to anybody with children. So with that, let's go in. Whatever I have to say, obviously, is a fraction of the teaching that I have been able to imbibe from my gurus. And I really, there is no word to thank them at all. My children also have benefited by going to Chinmaya Balavihar since they were age 4. And my oldest just went to college. So we have had a 15-year of Chinmaya Balavihar, in which also they received a lot. And through them, I received a lot as well as my prostrations to Chinmaya Guru-Parampara, as well as Swami Paramarthananda, for whatever I'm able to share today. So before we go into what we can teach, this audience, I don't need to, this is a very, very august audience with a very, very in-depth knowledge of Advaita. So whatever I'm going to say is really, really tailoring it for how do you have those discussions at home? How do you pass it on to the children, especially today's children? And there are some reasons for that. In the earlier societies that we had, the children had a natural society in which they imbibed many of these concepts, right? They went to a patashala probably where they learned not just the Itihasa Purana, but they learned many of the concepts, the values, They probably had a home system which focused on Nitya Karma, Anushtana, Upasana. It was all done with a lot of Shraddha as a family. To some extent, we have lost that. So what I feel is then in this context, we have to redefine what it is that we want to create. And to the extent possible in a modern society, we can do what we can to give that atmosphere, give those kind of a basic understanding of Vedanta, so that we lay the seed for them to take it forward. So with that, I kind of thought about what are some realistic goals we can have for our children that, like I said, many of our ancestors naturally developed. So first, here are some things, and again, this is just my take on it. First, at least they can develop some basic awareness and some basic appreciation, and over time, some Shraddha for our Shastras. And as you know, this is a big, one of the, obviously not just a Shataka Sampatti, but even to proceed on this path, we need the Shraddha. And to do that to the modern children is not just to tell them you need to have Shraddha, but really to over time slowly build it with them by talking to them, by exposing them to the teaching, by discussing it in the context of their lives, and by also role modeling. Needless to say, that's the number one thing we need to do. It gets difficult as they grow up, so it's better to start early if possible. Secondly, right from childhood, it is going to be very helpful to have a guru figure as a role model. Now, today's children, I have been writing about this a lot. Our children lack those role models who embody Vedanta, not just the gurus, but even people in their lives. From that standpoint, it's very, very helpful to have a guru that the family follows and reveres, and then not just revere, but actually talk about the guru's teaching on an everyday basis. And the children have an anchor. Ideally, if this guru is accessible physically that the children can interact with, it's a huge blessing. But even otherwise, if it's possible to organize something where even occasionally we have an access to a guru, that's going to be a huge help. Thirdly, through the years of teaching, hopefully the children will pursue Artha Kama. They are going to do that, but hopefully they'll pursue that guided by Dharma. And we'll see some ways to do that as we go forward with the presentation. Fourthly, that they understand the yogas, right? They understand Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and they are able to do something to develop some Chitta Shuddhi and Ekagrata. These words will help them, and that's also what I'm going to talk about, is how can we create an environment. It's an internal progress we can't control, but how can we create an environment where they can pursue it. And then, like I said, more Artha Kama. And then finally, this is very important, I think, and all of us who have been studying Advaita Vedanta for a while, or even Dharma students for a while, we have our vision is transformed, right? As you know, our gurus keep telling us, Vedanta doesn't transform the world, Vedanta transforms our vision. Now, that vision is not, you can't put a switch and turn it on. That vision comes through several years of talking to them, exposing them to the teaching, doing some sadhana, and where the vision changes to the same world, but they look at it differently. I think those are things which I have noted down as things that we can show them at home by our own acharana and by all these conversations. I think, this is possible. I think we are now noticing a kind of a resurgence of Advaita, thanks to also the works of Advaita Academy and so on. I think it's possible to do so with a very deliberate parenting or very deliberate teaching style. So let me go into kind of a very short, so what we will do today is to really establish the why. Now, this audience doesn't need to be told why we need to study Vedanta. We are all here because we believe that Vedanta is the way to moksha. Not just that, it's a Parama Purushartha, and this is what I want to do. But how do we communicate that to the children of today, where they have certain doubts, they have certain skepticism, they live in a different world? How do you communicate the importance of Vedanta and why it's valuable today? So I want to suggest a way to sell it to them. Then we'll go into some concepts which I have structured as the teaching methodology for children, as well as the pedagogy as they grow up, because obviously age matters in how this is communicated, and how we can create an environment, like I say. So the first question, as you all know, with this group, again, this audience knows that moksha is the Parama Purushartha. In fact, later we are told it's the only Purushartha, and then Vedanta is the means for it. So how do you position it? Another challenge I'm finding is the children are, today's children especially, they are very, very sharp in their sthula buddhi. They are very intellectually sharp. They're very rational, and they don't shy away from asking questions, right? I mean, they are very confident about their opinions. They are ready to debate with a parent or an elder. In fact, even with the guru, frankly, I would not dare to do that, but my children have that relationship with our guru, the Swamiji, and they are able to ask those questions to him. So I feel it's very, very important to start with the why and emphasize on them that this is very important to answer these questions, because then the Shraddha for Vedanta is born, and hopefully they'll pursue it for the rest of their lives. So I'm going to address 5 separate questions that typically the children have about why should we even do it. So the first question is really, again, this popular notion that Vedanta is some mystical esoteric system, right? Because we always associate them with sadhus in the Himalayas or the ashrams. Now we need to really demystify this perception, right? We need to say that Vedanta, we need to keep telling them, and it's not a one answer. The answer keeps getting built over years with a lot of our proof points, a lot of our discussions. It's very clear that Vedanta is a Tattva Darshana. It's fundamental questions of philosophy, but more importantly, it's a very logical answer to about. There's nothing mystical or esoteric about it. It's a lived experience, as we know. It's aparoksha. It's not some sadhu saying something and we believe. It is possible for us to have the aparoksha anubhava and we immediate truths of Vedanta, as we call it. But also, I think in the light of, because today everybody needs all these name dropping. In the light of that, I also tell them, see, everything in quantum mechanics, and I'm also a science student to some extent, so I also talk about this a lot. Recently, Michio Kaku has written about many Western thinkers or scientists are talking about. I also throw this. This is the answer to many things. So it's not mystical, esoteric, it's scientific, it's logical. And I think we need to get, because they are not interested in the mysticism and esoteric right away, right? Eventually they may. So the takeaway for them, it should be very strongly established in them that Vedanta is a scientific, logical way to live. So that is the first question. The second question is, what's the need for Vedanta today? Like, I'm fine, everything is fine. And especially we live in a society, very prosperous, very, lot of technology, reasonable peace wherever we live. So what is the problem? So I tell my children that you have not got to the, we are asked to do that, right? Pariksha Lokan, Karmachitan, Brahmana. They have not got to that stage yet. Their life is all very fine. So the question for them is, no, actually it's not fine. You may be fine. But look at the world today. So there is huge problems, across the world, but especially in the West, we are seeing number of problems that children and youth are facing. The stress, the mental health is almost like a mini epidemic, pandemic kind of a thing. Huge amount of distraction they have, unlike our previous generation, even compared to our generation. In the last decade or so, social media has just transformed our minds in ways that I think we'll be studying about it centuries later, how this one decade has transformed our minds. Huge amount of addictions and confusions, obviously. Propaganda, a lot of news, which to believe, which not to believe. The problems in families, obviously, we're seeing a lot of instability, huge divorce rates in the West. Lack of emotional support, definitely the marriages, while they're happening, the approach is not to say, what do I give into the marriage, but what do I get out of it? Very different approach these days. And then finally, the problems in society, huge amount of ideologies that are being thrown around. There is, intense consumption, there's greed. And frankly, though, like I said earlier, the role models are very poor. The celebrities or the sports people and all of that, they are fine in their roles, but they are becoming larger than life role models. And in fact, I joke that, social media is like more closer to Pratibhasika than even Vyavaharika, because it's a completely made up world. So we have an issue with role models. Shreyan, we have this Shreya Purushas, Shreshta Purushas are not there anymore in their lives. So what we have to do is to use conversations in the at home to drive home this point that All of these problems are existing because people have not understood themselves. People have not understood their minds. So if you don't know how to use the most important instrument in your that you've been given, how are you going to live life, right? And as Pujya Swami Chinmayanandaji says, we continue to improve our standard of living, but not our standard of life, which is a very internal goal to have. And always I try to point out this dichotomy that all of this happening, but what is happening in your inner mind. So this, again, these are kind of conversations that I think, especially in teenage, they start understanding and they start responding to. So the Vedanta, I try to hope that by the time we are done with them, let's say 18 or 20 years old, they understand that Vedanta has pretty much the only solution to life's problems. There is really no other solution, as we all know here. And thirdly, there's this also notion that it's all very old, right? It's all old concepts. So, okay, even understand that there's something that I need to do with my mind. These are all old concepts. How do they apply? And some of you parents will know, our children are thinking even books written in our 20th century are old, and movies made in 2000 are antiquated according to them. They don't even want to watch movies made in like when we were growing up. So they ask, either they may explicitly ask, or they may say, or they may have it in their mind that Vedanta is like some ancient knowledge, and it's not. But I kind of tell them that no, it's our rishis were not viewing temporary changes in society. They had a very, very keen, deep understanding of the human mind. And that is why Dharma is called Sanatana. It's not based on some historical prophet or book. And also, I tell them that the human condition has not changed at all. We still chase the same purusharthas. The same categories are the same. Inside that, we may, maybe our ancestors look for gold or land. Now we want the latest iPhone or Tesla or whatever, but the fundamental purusharthas remain the same. The same Shadripus of the mind, same Ragadvesha, Kamakrodadi, same emotional ups and downs that we get, upset, impacted by. And the same three tapas, the, Adi Devika, Adi Bhautika, and Adhyatmika tapas, COVID or whatever, wars, and, the people around us, our own internal issues, they remain the same. So nothing has really changed if you look at it from that standpoint. So I do try to tell them that all the technology, even next generation of technology, AI or whatever we have, or even all kinds of prosperity will not make any change. We are still, even hundreds of years from now, we will still continue to face the same issues, because these are very universal, fundamental issues that our rishis were dealing with. So I do want them to remember that Vedanta is applicable eternally and universally, because we have, many of us audience are from the different countries outside of Bharat. So that is also something they feel, is it applicable here? And we can do some exercises with them. Talk about what's happening in our country. Same issues are happening in our country. In fact, in worse ways sometimes. So it's important to have these discussions so they get the why and not our version of the why. Then the other question is, yeah, it's all fine. Why do I have to learn about it now? Can't I do it later? And we all, our Swamijis, our gurus have all told us that, no, you have to do it now. It's going to help you immediately. Even the journey is a fantastic journey, because, it helps us right away with our studies or career or marriage. And as Krishna, says, Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat kalyanakrit kaschit. So these are not things that are later. It changes your life as you progress through the journey. Even the journey is going to purify you, and the journey is going to strengthen you. And the second point is a subtle intellectual system that, that needs a personal study. So since the Patashalas are the past, there is nothing like that anymore. The onus is on us to embark on the study. Schools are not doing what they are doing. We don't have that infrastructure. So the family has to do and rely on whatever support they have, either some Bal Vihar or some Sunday school or some access to some gurus that we have to embark on this journey ourselves. And then obviously we all know Vedanta needs adhikara, and it's better to start building them early on so that you're prepared for it. So I tell them that, you need to learn Vedanta to reap its benefits right now, not some future. Right now, your mukti is not, as we all know, is not in time. You have to claim your nature right now as you go forward with life. The next question is usually, isn't Vedanta opposed to material success? Again, we all know this. So yeah, no, not at all. In fact, our children, obviously they want to accomplish. They are at a stage of life where they want to accomplish, and they should go for it. They should go for success in academics or whatever, college or career and marriage and relationships. They are going to want to indulge in, luxuries of life or travel and all of this stuff. No problem. So they can go ahead with all this, but with Vedanta, they will actually be better equipped to do so. We all know this. So Vedanta is for the man and woman of action. It's not just for the sadhus in the Himalayas. It's not opposed to anything dharmika at least. So you can pursue artha kama in any form as long as it's dharmika. And it will also actually enable us to achieve in the material world, but without the negatives. I mean, I talk about it. I think it's almost like a pre-Dvija. I feel like a Dvija. I was born again because the life after getting some of this jnana, even after a Gita study, is very transformative. So you're actually able to accomplish more in the world without the negativity and without the negative side of it. So Vedanta is not opposed to material goals, and it'll actually help you in every pursuit. So these are what I'm thinking as some of the whys. So if they are able to get the why, and if they understand the reason, then the journey becomes easier. We can have the teaching, the role modeling, the sadhana as a family is much easier. So with that, let's go into some of the what and how we can teach. It's a lifetime pursuit. So what do you start with? Now, let me start with what we cannot do. And we all know this. It's an internal journey. It's adhyatma, obviously. We cannot force chitta shuddhi or ekagrata. That's an internal thing. We cannot obviously increase their mumukshutvam. That has to come with their own sadhana and their own journey. Of course, every child is different. We all know Purva Janma Vasana. It's all there. And finally, definitely, we cannot make mukti happen. Sri Krishna couldn't do it for Arjuna, and our gurus are not able to do it for us. So that is obviously not possible. But what can we do? So the way I've been doing in the workshops is some of these 7 steps. So Saptapadi, it's just to keep it easy. And I think it's like a marriage to Vedanta, a marriage to knowledge in a way. So the 7 steps, and I'll go through just one slide for each of them, explaining age-appropriate Vedanta concepts, and we'll talk about that. Sharing Itihasa Purana Kathas to instill the teaching. That's easy, fun. Who doesn't like to talk about stories? It's wonderful. Learn, discuss, and practice Gita values. Create an environment to nurture Shataka Sampatti. That is possible at least from a parent standpoint. Motivate them towards Karma Yoga. I think that's to some extent possible. And the one thing which I've added, which I have been doing a lot, is facilitating discussion of life and world events with a Vedanta lens. And finally, and probably this is the number one, is role modeling. This is number one. It shouldn't be said, but I think it's not complete if I don't say that. So let's go into each of them. This is a packed slide, and I won't go into all of this, but this is also roughly based on what they do at Chinmaya Balavihar. So it's very, very possible. So what I do want to drill down is, I have children. I have slightly older children. My youngest is 12. They can remember these concepts. They are smart. They are learning all kinds of concepts in school. So why cannot they learn some, fundamental knowledge of Vedanta, some fundamental terms and definitions? So what I want to do is to make these terms very common. The point is not, again, as we know, not just to, memorize the terms, but having the terms become very common and demystify them. So they are not some strange terms, but they have used things that we use in our normal life. So I try to use the Sanskrit words as much as possible, but not because of knowledge, but really to make that value or that term apply in our lives very easily, so we can talk about it. So for example, so I've kind of categorized what we can do: pre-teenage, early to mid-teenage, and late teenage and youth. So with pre-teenage, some of the words, easy words, and many of these are commonly used in India also, right? When in Bharat, when we grow up, we were commonly using many of these terms. Papa Punya, we can talk about that. Shreyas and prayers, very helpful. And I use that often. Did you do your homework? Were you playing? If you're playing, is it prayers or Shreyas? Have them discuss it. So this can start very, very early on as they start, getting into school, for example. Shadripus, we can talk about Raga Dvesha, how you overcome. See, you wanted to do that, but that's not the right thing to do. You have to overcome your likes and dislikes. That is easily possible. I'm not going to go through every term, but just some with an example. Purusharthas, they can understand easily. They can categorize their activity. And I tell them, we can aim for a balanced lifestyle. Right now, they're not going to abandon Artha Kama, obviously. But they can try to say, hey, let's have some balance here. Let's have a balanced Purushartha approach right now. Tapatrayam, I talk about it. These are things that are going to happen in your life. Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, you don't have control over them at all. Adi Daivika to some extent. So there is no point complaining and whining and all of that. So find out what you can change, do what you can, and then bear the rest. And this is something that we can encourage them to do early on. Karma is I think early on is the very, very important part is insisting on the dinachara and the nitya karmas. Every day, this is something that you have to do, overcome your raga dvesha to do your nitya karma. It could be obviously the Vaidika, like upasana or lighting the lamp or chanting something, that could be it, but it's also other chores in your life. It is your nitya karma, you got to do them. Also, another concept which I think very, very helpful for children is a Panchamahayajna. Do you have a plan for a Panchamahayajna? And in the workshops, I tell our parents and students, have a Panchamahayajna plan, put it, document it. What are you going to do for Panchamahayajna every day, every week, every month, and do that. If you write it down in your busy lives, you won't forget it. You can go ahead and do it. So even something small, like for example, what are the plans? Put out bird feed, that's Bhuta Yajna. Did you call your grandparents? That is Pitru Yajna. Did you do your prayer? The Deva Yajna and so on. Shadaka Sampati, they know it. Viveka Vairagya Mumukshutvam is a little difficult in that stage. We can go a little later. But Shataka Sampati, I think they can understand. It's an inner discipline. How do you develop it? It's possible to do that. We'll look at some examples later. Then moving on to early mid-teenage, they can handle more subtler topics. This is an age where, and even earlier it starts, but this is the age where a lot of focus on the values and mind management can happen. So definitely, Gita is full of different shlokas for values. We have many, shlokas that we can draw upon from the Gita itself, but really about Antakarana Shuddhi, Anta Ekagrata, that is really the focus of this age, I think, where we make them do things. Pre-teenage is more around learning, having fun, stories, everything. But early to mid-teenage is where they can actually do things. So they light the lamp every day. That's your job. You have to do it. When we do family puja, you are responsible for Naivedyam and Deepa and all of that. So Ashtotram, one of the children chants. So a lot of things they can do every day. When we read shloka, your job is to read one verse meaning every day. So a lot of things that they do by themselves, so they can get the, understand the values. We'll look at more detail later. Definitely so a lot of things which we'll talk about later in detail, but one of the important things which I like to point out, Swami Omkaranandaji, Brahmalin Swami Omkaranandaji once said that by the time for every Hindu, at least develop Jivatma Bhava. Even if you don't have a Brahmatma Bhava, all of us are working towards it, but at least graduate from Dehatma Bhava to Jivatma Bhava. That is really an essence of being a Hindu in a way, because rebirth, the Punarjanma, the law of karma, that's a fundamental notion for us. But today, even Hindus who we talk about being a Hindu, we know about Punarjanma, we behave as though this is our only birth and this is, we are from a Dehatma Bhava. I think that is something we can also talk a lot about. These are what you say, fundamental truths that need to be established in them. Unfortunately, because of the environment, sometimes it doesn't. So even the external things can happen over time, but the internal Shraddha in Punarjanma, in a Jiva and the Jivatma Bhava can really help. And to that, of course, the Sanchita Karma, Prarabdha, Agami Karma and all that. And then the one more important thing which I wanted to highlight is the concept of Ishvara. Again, now we have a very, very Abrahamic view of Ishvara, transcendent God, and, it lives in some heaven. Even adult Hindus have they don't understand the concept of Ishvara from the Virat, Hiranyagarbha and Ishvara standpoint. Don't understand the role of Saguna. So I like to talk about the role. What is, obviously we have this, Pratama, Pratika Puja, the Pratikam and the Omkara and the Nirguna. Same thing, we can use many examples. We can use the water, ocean, wave example. We can talk about later Upadana Nimitta Karanam as well. And then the dream, swapna prakriya, we can use how you are the Ishvara of your dream and, everything manifests from you. Those are good examples to use for communicating or for teaching the concept of Ishvara. Again, very, very important, because again, these are topics where the children don't have, like, why are we this? Because this idol worship has been kind of brainwashed into them, this whole notion of what is this Ganesha and what is this Vishnu. And so I think very important to have these discussions. I mention this all the time, klesho adhikarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukham dehavat bhiravapyate. We are not, you're a selfie generation, you want pictures everywhere. You cannot go directly to Nirguna Upasana. Saguna is perfect, and that's where we start. And later, late teenage to youth, we can do a lot more complex topics like, Upadana Nimitta Karanam. We can talk about the Vasanas and the Mithya. A lot of examples our Acharyas have provided, right? The mud pot example, the Mrigatrishna example. I use Mrigatrishna example. We even did a play, like a mother taking a child to the desert and a guru taking a shishya to, talk about Brahmajnana, and they talked about the Mithyatvam of the Jagat. But only thing I want to be very careful is, this is very tricky, because the immediate question when you talk about these things is, and what's the point of everything? This nihilism. So if everything is Mithya, very predictable answers, then what's the point of anything then? So we have to be a little careful when we go into these kind of discussions. It's okay to expose them to it, but I think it needs a much more sukshma buddhi to understand the Vyavaharika and the Paramarthika. So the only thing we want to reiterate at this late teenage, when we talk about the Maya, Jagat, and the Satchitananda Rupa of Brahman, is that the Jagat is not the source of your happiness. The source of happiness is within you. If they understand that to some extent, that should probably be enough. So these are obviously the science of Vedanta. It's possible for them to learn it. As I was putting this slide together, I tested my children on it, and they remembered a lot of what they had learned in Chinmaya Balavihar, as well as what I've been doing at home. So it's very possible for them to remember many of these concepts, at least as a science. Then the second part, which I said, the second of the Saptapadi that I mentioned, is to really use our huge, massive corpus of Itihasa, Purana, and our Kathas of our Mahapurushas to instill the teaching. And as you all know, one story can accomplish what hours of teaching cannot. So it's very, very easy to read, encourage retelling. So they read and they tell it to you, enact the stories. So for the longest time, every night we would do story time. Either I would tell them or they would tell me. So we had this thing. And then as much as possible, I would try to infuse, hey, this is what it says in the Gita. This is what, remember what happened to this Mahatma, and make those connections. Lots of stories are there, obviously. Krishna Leela. Initially, it's a lot of fun, stories for fun and adventure. And then we go into more of inspiration, Arjuna, Harishchandra, and so on. And later, Mahatmas like Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya. Later on, it becomes more layered stories, right? So we should be able to even, for example, analyze Bhishma Pitamaha or Yudhishthira or these layered characters and see what they faced and how they were. I mean, even Sri Krishna, for that matter, how he had to face it was not a bed of roses. He had to make some decisions, and Shishupala Vada happened where he was insulted. So a lot of stories from obviously Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Sri Krishna playing the role of many, many roles. And this powerful story that I tell them, that don't say every job needs to be done like a Swadharmonidhanam Shreyaha or Swakarmanatam Stamabhyarcha, is see how Krishna was doing washing the feet of the guests in the Rajasuya Yajna. He was happily doing this. Then he was called to be the main guest and his feet were washed. He was also happy to take that. So many stories, and my blog, I have multiple stories like that where it makes a connection between Puranas and Gita. Yet for children, I would put the very favorite thing, which I've done a camp for children a few years back, is our own Hanumanji. There is nobody, I think, is a complete character for all ages, right from the fun and the adventures for the young to more of inspiration. I did the whole camp was around Buddhir Balam Yashodhairyam, that shloka, and I brought out how Hanumanji did and how we can also develop. So that is a great way for him. He's a consummate role model. And later his one shloka, that's like I would say it's a treasure load of a Vedanta, the Deha Buddhya Tavadasoham Jiva Buddhya Tavadam Shakaha shloka. amazing way to look at Vedanta and live it. So there's enough in our Puranas, Itihasa. This itself could be a whole, several day lecture. So that's a second. Third is we go into more around learning and practice the values of the Gita. A young age is obviously the greatest time to instill values, but more importantly, as Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati says, instill the value for the values. Ours is not a morality religion, right? If there is a certain discussion I have is our values that we talk about in the Gita, for example, any of them, right? Chapter 2, Prajahati Yada Kaman, Adveshta Sarva Bhutana Mavanittam Adam Vitvam, Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhi. All of these, they're not so much about morality, as initially we say it's morality, Punya Papa, but it's more around the effect on us. And I talk about this very, very strongly. In fact, we can make those connections. What you did several years back will come back to you, not because of some God-given punishment, which also happens, but more because it diminishes us. And this Daivi Sampat Vimokshaya Nibandha Asuri Mata, right? It weakens us. It destroys our own self-worth. And when we follow the values, we build our self-esteem. We can stand tall. We can look people in the eyes. We can bear our problems easily because we know we have done the right thing. And that self-esteem will help us accomplish many, many things. So these are, because the children, this is a continuing exercise, not just for the children, but also for us. So this is very, very helpful. Again, understanding the values, and I at least have memorized some of these verses because I think it's very helpful to memorize them. So it comes to you immediately, and then I can point out to them, right? I tell them, hey, that's Adambitvam, or, you're getting too upset for something, Samatvam is not there, or, Satya Jnanartha Darshanam is not there. So you're getting too attached. So we can use these words in our life very easily. We can discuss how to practice them, why it's challenging, how, why we did it and how we cannot do it again. So it's a very honest discussion, lots of inspiration from the stories. And then we can assess each other during life situation and help each other progress. And one of the things which I would recommend is I tell my children also, I have X, Y, and Z problems. I want your help on it. I complain a lot about the cold weather in Chicago. So I tell them, hey, stop me from complaining, and my son says, oh, you should develop more titiksha, or I'm sometimes careless. And I tell myself, Atmavan, I need to be more Atmavan. So a lot of things that we can help each other in the family using these terms. The next one, which I wanted to talk about, is really to build environment. So once upon a time, like we talked about, the environment kind of helped build Shataka Sampatti. The physical comforts and like all the entertainment, 24-hour entertainment, distractions were very minimal. And the families were already quite following their traditions and, Vaidika karma. They were, it may have been easier to develop Shraddha to Shastras or to Guru. So there were a certain amount of lifestyle which contributed to building Shataka Sampatti. Even then they said it was hard. Acharyas say it was hard. Now it's like we are facing a time where, it's very difficult. So if you look at Shama, for example, which, obviously, is, control of mind, discipline of the mind, it's full of distractions, social media, non-stop, 24-hour, TV, 24-hour Netflix and all of this. And this word, which is very interesting, your children will talk about it. It's called FOMO, is a fear of missing out. They feel like they have to do something. They have to go do something. They're even sitting idle for some time is hard. They feel they're missing out on something. So this there's a poor emotional regulation because of the non-stop chatter and the speed of interactions that we have. So creating a discipline to slow down and take your time out and put devices away, it's very possible to develop that. It's something that we can discuss with the children. Dhamma, again, constant temptations, a world of Swiggy and Uber Eats and Netflix and TikTok and a whole lot of other stuff. That is just to know, that temptations all over the place. Even if you tell yourself not to do, it's right there. Or somebody has posted about it, or somebody is sharing some photo of whatever they ate. It's constant onslaught to the senses and to the mind. Uparama, obviously we are a rat race right now, and every child is packed with excessive activities. We all know that. Everybody's running from class to class. There's no time to even be home and light a lamp and say a prayer. So mind management, some upasana, sadhana, everything is like in the back seat. But these are very, very critical skills for life. Titiksha, we know that, I feel some doses of unpleasant is good for them. I've told them that, you're going to have to put up with that. I'm not going to pamper you, because if you don't develop some titiksha for some things in your life, you'll be shattered by even small things that happen later on. And even modern thinkers like Nassim Taleb, for example, he has written a whole book on this anti-fragile behavior. Anti-fragile is titiksha to us, right? We have a perfect word for it, which the West doesn't. That's why he had to create this word called anti-fragile. That's titiksha for us. Samadhanam. There was a funny study a few years back that said a goldfish has more concentration now than today's human. It's very funny. But the point is, our teenagers are losing the capacity to read long books. Or, it's a Twitter generation. They want a quick photo, or they want a quick tweet. So helping them develop concentrations for a long period of time, it's actually helpful for Vedanta, but it's super helpful for their own life. So there are ways we can do that. Shraddha, again, is very subtle, but constant discussion and involvement will have it. Now, the point is, all of this requires creating a home environment where we are not giving in to what's happening around us. So it's very difficult for us to, every time the child says, well, they get to, my friends get to do it. So it's an uphill battle for us to make sure that we are creating that environment. And we can do that only through this logic, not by saying, oh, listen to me, you have to listen to me. That won't work. So the discussion is around, hey, Shataka Sampatti is important for life as well as for, Vedanta and Moksha Purushartha. But however, it needs an environment for that. And that's why we are doing this. We are not taking away your phone because we think we want to be cruel parents. We are taking it because we need you to develop shama. We are not insisting that you eat whatever is given to you, because we want you to develop titiksha. We are not going to pamper you with everything. We are going to insist on certain nitya karma. We are going to insist on a life that is a little more disciplined than what your friends may or may not be doing. So, but the point is, we can create this discipline not by force, by explaining the value, because we have the terms, we have the Shataka Sampatti terms, the definitions, and so on, to be able to do that. Then we have this motivating towards karma yoga. So as you know, we can definitely expose them to all the yogas and their purpose. That's definitely possible. However, encouraging towards karma yoga. So at the least, just like what Sri Krishna did to Arjuna, he went through all of the Jnana Yoga portion, then come back to 18th chapter and says, just do your swadharma, swakarmana, swadharma, swanidhanam shreyaha, and so on. So they are naturally, at their time, age of their lives, children are naturally inclined for karma. So we'll just go and say, I tell them that go and fight your battle, yogaya yudhyasya, just do it with yoga. So at the least, avoid nishiddha karma, do your swakarma, overcoming your ragadvesha, and pick your, if they are looking at a future career and all of that, opt for a swabhavaniyatam karma, obviously. And that's, by the way, that's even recently, Warren Buffett was saying that too. Pick something that you like to get up and go for work in the morning, then do something else. So that's, many great thinkers across the world say that. So we can make the connection and say Warren Buffett says it too. So hopefully we'll get a little more interest in that. Definitely have a Panchamahayagna plan. I think this is something every Hindu family can have. Write it down, in fact, because we are all very busy, we forget. So I write it down. Every month I'm going to do one Bhuta Yajna. Every week I'm going to do this thing. So it helps to remember. And then it's very, very difficult to expect, from a Karma Yoga standpoint, it's very difficult to expect them to have Ishwara Arpana Buddhi, no matter what happens, Ishwara Prasada Buddhi. It's a little hard, we can talk about it. But at the least, I tell them, just have you chanted, just Bajrang Bali or whatever, Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, something before you start any task. I keep reminding them, even after they leave my home, I text them, hey, have you done that before you leave? So I think these are small things we can do to, model and show Karma Yoga. Of course, the attitude is internal. We can't do much about it. Now, the one more thing which I like to do, I'm also a big student of other, news and, all kinds of topics, psychology and all of that. So every experience is an opportunity for vichara. And Pariksha Lokan Karma Chitanda cannot come only from us. We can also look at the world and analyze it and learn from it. So the vichara around many things. For example, 2 weeks back, there was an article from Harvard and MIT that said they're working on a hair brush that will not cause any pain. Now, this is something that immediately I thought about pratikara, right? From Viveka Chudamani, Sahanam Sarva Dukkanam Apratikara Purvakam. A constant pratikara for even the smallest thing. Yes, it's a little painful for some children. It's very hard. I'm not saying no, but we try to fix every single pain around us. Then what happens is we lose the capacity to bear any kind of pain. And I shared this joke with them, and I said, this news with my children, and I also showed them Swami Chinmayananda's very hilarious little video clip on this particular shloka, how a man keeps changing the environment, and it's a very hilarious clip, so they understood it. We also saw a movie, for example, called Blue Umbrella. It's on Netflix. And in the movie, this is about an elderly man who is craving his complete spriha for this umbrella that a little girl has. And his whole character, he's diminished, he steals and he lies and he cheats. Perfect movie. I think it was done for Dhyayate Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshopajayate shloka from the Gita, the ladder of fall, how, the craving takes you to anger, to delusion, to, then you forget what is right and wrong, and eventually buddhi nashaha pranashyati. So perfect to have these discussions at home around it. Personal events, successes and failures, I try to, and this is something very, very important for children. They are going to face it. They are going to face successes and massive failures. I mean, that's part of their life. So when they do that, I try to tell them, Dukeshvanud Vignamanaha Sukeshu Vigatasprihaha, don't go too devastated or too elated. It's just, okay, thank you, move on, or yes, I'll do better, move on. And that also builds a lot of stamina. Social media, we can do that, we can do that for everything. So in light of time, I will go ahead. So, however, I think there are 7 do's and don'ts which I wanted to bring up because children are these days very difficult to handle also in some ways. So 7 do's and don'ts, very short nuggets are enough, no long lectures, they do not like it. So I think 5 minutes, 3 minutes, have and more of a discussion. Don't dismiss any question or doubt. They are going to come back and say, no, I don't agree with that and all of that. Have a discussion around that rather than force our viewpoint on it. Don't preach, present the logic. And our logic, I mean, like every Shastra that we read, it's packed with logic. So, and our Acharyas commentaries are so full of logic. It's very easy for us to just repeat what we hear from our Acharyas and pass it on to them. I try to use the Sanskrit terms because they are easy recall. They can remember, and Shreya's prayers, for example, I keep talking about the Titiksha, Dhamma, and, we talk about this. The children remember we have a common language and it doesn't need a long explanation. We just say Titiksha, they got it. So it's easy to have those communication going on. And when we are not sure of something, it's better to accept and learn together. And these days, go where they are. They are more accessible on text, and depending on, I have one child who has left the house now. So text or social media DMs are perfect. So often I'm sending them something on, some clip from an Acharya or, some quote that I found, or, so we can keep going, having the communication going on. And finally, grab the moment. We try to do something in front of, when we sit in the evening prayer, we try to do it. One of the ways I try to do is to either, when we are chanting a shloka, I tell them pick one shloka and read out the meaning, let's discuss it. Or if that's a certain festival or Somavara for Shiva, then we have some discussion about Shiva. So there are things we can do formally, but they can also do many things informally, going for a walk in the car or, whenever possible. So there's some suggestions to make it happen in our lives. And finally, needless to say, this is probably the most important. The children are quite perceptive of hypocrisy. No mithyachara is allowed according to the children. So we have to walk the talk, and we benefit from that as well. So let them see us be very regular in our swadhyaya, sadhana, and satsang. And these 3 things, again, from my workshops, I'm telling them, have a swadhyaya plan, have a sadhana plan, and have a satsang. Make that your life, and let them see us do it. Let them see, make Guru Seva a priority. Let them see, make sadhana a priority. And most importantly, our acharana, right? They are going to notice that every time. And in fact, there have been children from my workshops who came and told me, I'm seeing hypocrisy in my homes. So we are also struggling. And I'm honest with my children. I say, I have my own malavikshepas also. Help me and I'll help you. So we kind of say, we get their help as well. And they willingly, very willingly give you their advice. As Swami Chinmayananda ji says, culture cannot be taught, it can only be caught. So our acharana matters more than, all the teaching. Finally, what's next? As we know, there's a shloka, right? Acharya padam adatte padam shishya swamidhyasa brahmacharyabhya padam kala kramena cha. So we have passed on the words of the Guru to them. We are encouraging them to do some self-study. Hopefully they will find satsang, they will be with like-minded people. And now there are many, many avenues of them to do that. They have to take the initiative. Many colleges, many universities, they have some satsang, some form of satsang, or they can start one. And then finally, we leave it to time and Bhagavan to take them forward in their journey. More than anything, in parenting, more than anything else, we have to have the Ishvara Prasada Bhava and the Karma Yoga Bhava, Karmanyevadikaraste. The child has just come through us and not from us. So we have to remember that and do our part in planting the seed and nurturing the plant, but then the plant takes on its own life and form. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation and look forward to any questions or any kind of comments that you have on the topic. Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari
Om. Thank you very much, Deepa ji. That was a very exhaustive and extremely nuanced presentation on how to expose children to the world of Vedanta. I mean, most of us are very scared, thinking that exposing children to Vedanta is like disaster. But you've actually told us how, in a very calibrated manner, you can expose them to this. And the feedback is extremely positive. Everybody's been saying very nice things about your session. Very lovely, informative session. Much gratitude. So we're very happy to take some questions. There's one question from Aditi ji, and she says, yes, I agree with Pavitra. We need to listen to these a few times. So please provide opportunities to ask questions when they arise, as they may not during these live sessions, or in the case of, or like in the case of Swaminiji's talk, it was a recording this morning. Okay, I don't know what is the context in which she's saying this. So maybe Aditi ji, if you could just clarify your question, we can ask Deepa ji can answer that for you. So I had a question. The one risk factor that, as you yourself pointed out, is that exposing children to Vedanta will make them skeptical about our rituals and traditions to follow, because they see that Vedanta clearly empowers them. So they may not see a value for prayer and puja. How does one work against, how does one counter that sort of risk?
Right. So that I kind of very quickly skip through that. We know this Jiva Yatra journey, right? So Karma Yoga for Chitta Shuddhi, Raja Yoga for Ekagrata, Bhakti Yoga for Ekagrata to a higher goal, and then finally Jnana Yoga for Jnana, right? So this there is a perfect role, and I don't think many adults also, I didn't know also before I started study, there is a perfect place for each of these upasanas or meditation or yoga or everything. There's a perfect place for everything in our it's kind of a map, really nice laid path. So the path for Saguna Upasana is definitely there, and as you work towards your Chitta Ekagrata, as well as align yourself to a higher goal, it's very useful. And also even, and as we know, I think these are, I tell them, what I tell them is, for that period of time, half an hour you take for that Upasana, that is a time where you are aligning your mind to a higher ideal. And that alignment actually takes you through the years, right? Like through the week or through the day, it stays with you. And the subtle, so one of the things which I have not brought and I talked about earlier is the need for understanding the subtle. So our children are very operating at a very surface level, right? They are very, like I said, stula buddhi level. They are very, very sharp. But, as you know, there is emotional intelligence. And in our case, it's even deeper, the spiritual intelligence. So the understanding the sukshma of our own nature takes a long time. It has taken me a long time. I'm sure everybody is on that journey. So having the upasana, it stays with you, that upasana devata, the Ishta devata stays with you through the day, preventing you from falling off doing anything nishiddha, enabling you to stand with the values, really, and develops love, and again, I don't have time to do that, but in the workshops I talk about, and when in Kama, the Hindu way, I've been talking about it, is even the capacity to love is gone now. right? Like, we can't even, all the love we talk about is very conditional love, right? In the marriage, you expect more than you want to give. So even the only opportunity we have for that unconditional love is either through to our children, that too initially only. After that, when the problem comes, we are very irritated. So the only opportunity we have to even know what it is to love is only through a Ishtadevata Upasana. That's where our mind is completely given to that Bhagavan, and even so that it has a big role in not just Ekagrata, but also softening our mind. I mean, many Mahatmas have talked about the whole reason every Advaita Acharya has huge Saguna Upasana, right? They are all Saguna Bhaktas also because of that reason. So I think it's not a one answer. They do see that, but the more they do. So one of the challenges about Saguna Upasana or even Dhyana is you only realize the benefit the more you do it, right? You don't get it the first time, second time, it feels very artificial. In fact, I felt it when I first started doing Somavara Puja and all, I felt like awkward. But as you do, it becomes so natural. So the children have to do it, which is why in the preteen and the early 10 to 15 age, I think we have to make them do it. So they don't feel it's something strange. It's like, and initially they won't sit for the whole half an hour and say, hey, you just do the Deepa Radhana and the Nevedya and then you go. Then you say, you do the Ashtotra today. You can do it. You can chant it. So slowly we draw them to make them feel that this is not something weird. They have this deal. They're like, oh, everything is weird, everything. So we start doing that and hopefully they will pursue. Now I have my child saying, I actually like doing it. Let me do it. I like making, prasad. I like, doing Abhisheka. I make them do the Abhisheka. So there is no one answer, but I think this is why I'm saying the practice we make them do feel more comfortable along with the discussions is what is going to make a change in today's children. I think they are not going to accept it otherwise.
Thank you very much for that answer. Aditiji's comment was that she says that it takes a while for people to ask questions because they have to process that information, and that's fine. You can always ask any question to any of our speakers in this entire month, so that's not a problem. Aditiji, thanks for attending our session, and so on. And then there's one more question, which is. Which you just now actually addressed, that some of the benefits of the Saguna Upasana may not come immediately, you see. And there I wanted to ask that much of the punya is actually the adrishta factor. We actually really don't see it. So how do you convince a skeptical teenager, how do you convince them about this adrishta factor in life?
Correct. Yeah. So this obviously, even from our Punarjanma standpoint, when we talk about, right, the science we can definitely talk about, the Sanchita Agami and Prarabdha Karma, we can definitely talk about. They will understand it. You kind of say nothing, if you accept that every action that you have, even Manas action, that's what our challenge, right? As we go forward in our sadhana, it's not just Sharirika, it's also the Manasa thoughts that we have. Everything is going to have a phala, right? It's going to have a phala. And that is what we are experiencing right now is the result of the past phalas that we have, all the karmas that we have done is what is manifesting now. So once you understand that, that's why I said Swami Omkarananda ji is very important point. Jivatma Bhava, we have to cultivate in some form or fashion. It's really difficult. And like I said, even our adult Hindus have lost that. We do, that's why we say RIP and we say, oh, my mother is watching and all of this, because we're not able to let go of that notion. It's a very obviously not our concept. So there's Jivatma Bhava. You are the result of what has happened for countless Jiva, your Janmas, and that's what you're experiencing now in terms of your Vasanas, in terms of your Karmas. I think that is going to help. Adrishta, I think it's very difficult. So that is why I say that, when they are young, you make them do, then they will themselves see the Adrishta Pala, right? So like I said, my child, when they do it, they say, well, I felt really good. I was very troubled about something and I feel really good about this, right? So doing that, and now and it's not easy for even adults. So it's like, even in college, it takes like, did you meditate today? Did you pray today? Did you, she is going some new exam. Did you do it? That it's going to bring you down to samatvam. Whatever you do, whatever technique you have, going to bring you to samatvam, and that samatvam is going to help you. So there is a logic involved in it. They are not going to completely accept Adrishta Palam right away, but I think it's a combination of these discussions around Punarjanma as well as how your state of your mind that helps you go forward.
Priya ji, we'll take one last question. Priya ji has a question, which is that that would you have some references compiled for us parents to imbibe? And there's, of course, Aditi ji also wanted to know, is there some place where she can email you for some questions in case she has? So maybe you can share that in the chat group.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I'm usually publicly talk about Hindu topics. So that is, I don't remember, but I go by Deepa Bhaskaran. So you should be able to find me there. And like I said, the workshops I'm conducting, that is lifethehinduvay.wordpress.com. So that is where I do. And then I also share a lot of my Gita and Purana study in another blog called hamsapakshi.com. I've added all of them in the chat here.
Thank you so much, Deepa ji. It was really wonderful having you with us and giving us a very lovely sharing on how to expose children to this wonderful knowledge of Vedanta. Viewers, we have many more programs coming. Let us tune into some of the announcements that will be shortly made.
I might interject here that we will be organizing Deepa ji's few workshops for teaching children in the coming weeks towards the end of May, and we will make announcements soon on our Facebook and Twitter. And this is another announcement I just wanted to make. Sorry, Anuradha ji, for interrupting. This is an essay competition on Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya that we have organized as part of the Global Festival. And this is open for people aged between 15 and 30. So we are targeting teenagers and other youngsters. And the details again are on our website and on our social media. You can pick any of the 4 topics and write an essay. Last date is 25th May. I hope more and more of you will participate. Please share it with your children and relatives and friends and everyone. Yeah. And tomorrow we have our own Anuradha ji, who is today's host. She will be the speaker tomorrow morning, and she will be speaking on a very interesting and a very important less covered topic, which is Shankara's Bhashya or enunciation in his Bhashya on Apastamba Dharma Sutra Adhyatma Patala. So this will be an interesting session. So please do register and attend the session tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Thank you.